So today is our panel, and it's going to be on early stage seed funding. And let me introduce the panelists to you. The details of their background is in the program booklet, but let me introduce Ken Rogers as our moderator. And Ken is leading the charge at Automation Alley, which is one of the largest, or the largest, business association in Southeast Michigan. Paula Sorrell is here with us from Michigan Economic Development Corporation, which is our economic development arm for the state of Michigan, and she's in charge of the entrepreneurship, innovation, and venture funding for the state. So she'd be a good person to meet. Sia McCaffrey is here as a former vice president of a company that was just purchased. So her original company was called 4C, and she was in charge of human resources, but she built that company over the last 12 years. So she was in a sense a startup, but she had funding from another source than maybe you are getting your funding from. So she has a different perspective. And her son is also a CMU student in entrepreneurship. So welcome, Sia. Aaron O'Brien is in charge of our CMU Research Corporation, was the business accelerator here on campus, and many of you have now been able to visit and utilize their resources. And we welcome her expertise in how to help fund startup companies and provide experience to them. Ken Kuski is Ken Kuski, yes. He's the Ken isn't.
Look out.
No. Ken he's actually started 3 companies. He's exited 3 companies. He's had 3 IPOs. He runs an organization called the Blue Water Angels, so an angel investment fund, and also the Mid-Michigan Innovation Center. So he's got a lot of experience in early stage seed funding. And Diane Durant is the president of MyQuest, and MyQuest is a company that helps bring entrepreneurial activity or experiences to the state of Michigan, not only for students but for other companies. And they do run a competition called Great Lakes Entrepreneurs Quest. I know she has cards, GLEQ, and the closure of that, you can enter that business plan competition right now. Any of the students competing today, the open date is till Monday, right? And you're all ready for it, so you don't even have to do much else but submit your application. She comes to us with a lot of experience. So with that in mind, read the details on their backgrounds because I missed a lot of good points, but I want to turn it over to the most important part, early stage seed funding, led by Ken.
Well, welcome everybody to this afternoon's program. We're all excited to be here and share this panel discussion on initial seed funding. As Deb mentioned, my name is Ken Rogers. I'm Executive Director of Automation Alley. We're a 1,000-member technology association in Southeast Michigan. And it's my pleasure to be the moderator for today's program. This is CMU's 4th student competition, where students are transforming ideas into a business venture. And this is an 8-month process with workshops, coaching, and networking. Last year, more than $65,000 in startup cash and in-kind prizes were awarded. As a result, there are 15 of those companies that are still in business, and this year's cash prize is $75,000. So we'll start off with some discussions on seed funding. So why don't we ask the first obvious question: what is seed funding, and how is it different than other funding opportunities? So we'll ask the panel for their comments. So Paula, we'll start with you.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say that I've been waiting my entire career to be on a venture funding discussion panel dominated by women. Congrats to my alma mater for pulling it off. So.
Cool.
Seed funding, I work mostly in the tech space. So we work with companies that have significant intellectual property that can be leveraged to pull in, that can be high growth and leveraged to pull in large amounts of capital. And so most of those start with funding that comes from the federal government to develop research or from other resources. So that space for a company that's between receiving federal funding or development funding to when they deliver enough customers or bring in enough revenue is called the Valley of Death. Isn't that nice? So we call seed funding the amount of funding that covers that Valley of Death. And in Michigan is unusual in that the state plays a very big role in being able to fill that space.
See ya?
Yeah, so for us, it was a little bit more unique. I was with CompuWare, and so for our seed funding, it was from an established company, which is pretty exciting. We also had the capability of using some of the seed resources, I call it, so we were able to kind of tap into the existing marketing group and technical group and so on. So we had that leverage and had that advantage to get started, and it felt a little bit more comfortable to do it that way.
Okay. Aaron?
I'll speak from more of a detailed level because Paula and I probably have a very similar response. But as it relates to all of you, as Deb mentioned earlier, they've been able to attain some funding for prototyping that's specific to people that are in CMU College of Business. So if you have not taken advantage of that, that's a nice start in some seed funding.
Ken, you started, 3 companies?
Yeah,
You know something about,
seeds.
why don't you tell us about them?
Seeds are prayers. They're not a business. They don't have revenues. They're not bankable. Any bank that would lend you money is probably violating federal regulations that try to safeguard their deposits. It's not an appropriate thing to bank. So how do you fund it? So a seed, and we actually also invest in something we call pre-seed. So a pre-seed is really the dream. Once you have a working prototype and a general framework, a targeted market, we might call it a seed round. But it's characterized, I think you guys have hit all the key points. The one piece I'd emphasize is it's a very, very difficult thing to fund because you're selling your dream. And that's all we have to go on.
Well, I live
Diane?
in the world of business plan competitions, and I know there's temptation to think of winning competitions as a way to fund your venture, and you could think of that as pre-seed funding in a way. But I think that what you have experienced here and what you would experience with GLEQ's business plan competition is what really can move you forward are the resources and connections you make when you participate in a program like this. So I congratulate all you students for participating in this, whether you win some pre-seed money or not, because you've made connections and you have built your credibility as an entrepreneur by participating. And with GLEQ, what we do is we match you with a business coach that will work with you and help you make other connections out in the community that can lead to the kinds of relationships that could result in you getting very early stage funding. Because typically people invest in people they know and feel comfortable with, that you know what you're doing and so forth. So I think that there's great opportunities through the competitions to win some money, but I just caution you against thinking you could really fund a business through competitions.
So if I'm starting a company, I've got an idea. And how do I take the next step? What's the process here? I've got a couple of friends. We've worked this out. We've got a product or a service in mind. We think we can move it forward. What do I need to do at that point in the prospects for a new enterprise? Who'd like to volunteer for that? Ken?
Where to begin on that? The point I try to make here is that you're facing a very different world than I did. Before 2008, we had billions of dollars that came from family, friends, and fools. Parents, relatives, colleagues, other co-partners in the business. And we drew that money out of home equity. And that fountain went dry in 2008, and it has never been replaced. So you're struggling with new territory that I can try to coach on, but it was really simpler in my day. So where do you get it? It used to be family, friends, and fools. Today, I think it's institutional. It's competitions. It's accelerators. We see around the country people willing to write that first check, whether it's Stark Garden in Grand Rapids, whether it's Bisdom in Detroit. We're seeing groups like that spring up around the state, and we're seeing state support for some of these initiatives. So the smart zones are playing a role in helping people align, but it's a different game. I like to argue that seeds with fertilizer, which is what we're providing in education and workshops, will kill the seeds if we don't add water, and that's the money you need. So we're all behind you trying to raise money. That's
Paula?
I think that, I think the panel would agree with me that the 95% of the companies that we see early on that are just starting out say that they need money. That's the number one thing that they're looking for. In reality, they need help. They need good business advice. They need good mentors. And Michigan, as Ken pointed out, has a very robust mentor system. There are lots of service providers in the state that are connected to the state that are, I mean, their main goal is just to give good advice. So I'm going to ask if you're with the Small Business Development Center, if you're with a service provider that's connected to the state, if you're with an incubator, can you raise your hand in the audience just so everybody can see how many there are?